to show you this because I always talk about like winning races and what I'm doing right now in the last like 5 years and where I've got to, but you never really see with athletes, especially in the social media age, you never really see like the backstory where these people came from and what they were able to do in order to get to where they get to, because not everybody obviously starts in a typical running way where you're kind of doing you're pretty good at school, then you go to college, then you have a scholarship and you go to America, then you're doing really well and you get picked up by a pro team, then you go the natural way of a typical distance runner. That would be the normal way. I didn't do it that way. It was 27. I was 27 years old when I'd been in recruitment for 6-7 years. I was totally career focused, and then all of a sudden there was a gap. There was a gap in the market, a crash in the market, and I needed to get out and do something else. And for me, the only thing that I could possibly think of was to do some traveling, because I'd always wanted to go traveling, and I'd always put it off because of my career. And now all of a sudden, it was it was back to. It was a possibility for me to go traveling again. So that's what I did. So I went cycle touring in Asia. I thought I was going to go for 6 weeks. It ended up like 3 months, and then I elongated and I stayed 12 months. And when you're spending loads of time on your own, you inevitably start to ask yourself questions. You're literally having conversations with yourself all the time because you're spending so much time, like 8, 10, 12 hours on the bike. You're in your own head. It's kind of like meditation in a way, but I was asking myself the same questions, which were like, are you doing what you really love? And are you on the right path in order to make that happen? And I didn't think I was. For me, I was too focused on everything that I'd been brought up to think I should chase as a young, successful male, from a place like Manchester. And that was like the right apartment, the right cars, a good job, high-paying job, the right clothes, all these materialistic things that really don't matter at all. And ultimately, what I came to the conclusion that I wanted to do was I was loving what I was doing, cycling every day, and I wanted to somehow make that into a profession. I was somehow wanting to get paid to do that, and so I ran as a kid. All I did as a kid was play sport, and now I had the opportunity to restart. So at the end of 2009, I got to a New Year's Eve party in Singapore after a really long cycle ride from Bangkok to Singapore. I came back, and on the 3rd or 4th of January, I went for my first run, and I thought I'll go out for an hour, I'll go an easy an hour, and within 400 meters, I was dead. So all that cycling fitness that I had from being on the bike for so long every day hadn't translated into running fitness, but I had started, and that's the main thing. So of course I was sore the next day. I didn't run the next day, but then I was online. I was looking for training plans. I became obsessed with progress. And this is the thing, if you're getting into something, no matter what level, no matter what your past history, no matter what level you are right now, initially, of course, the progression curve is going to be really, really steep. And if that initial motivation turns into habit and you can turn that into something, all of a sudden you're going to get that positive feedback loop. It's absolutely electrifying. Once you get it moving, anything can happen. And I'm going to show you kind of what happened to me. So I started training 3rd, 4th of January. I remember being on a treadmill. I was in Thailand. It was ridiculously hot and humid. So I was doing all my easy runs outside, and then my harder sessions on a treadmill. I picked something off Runner's World for a training program. And I made all the mistakes you can possibly make. And you can see that on the first race that I got back to Manchester, flew back to Manchester about April. First race I signed up for was a park run. So it may have got back a bit later. It may have been May. I did a 5K there and did it 18:20. So at that point, within sort of nearly 5 months' time, I got to a point where I could run, 340 per kilometre. So decent. But you can see within 3 weeks, within 3 weeks that I've gone from 22nd of May to the 12th of June. I've knocked nearly 2 minutes off my 5K time, and I'm now running towards 3:30, 3:20 per kilometer. And then somebody on Facebook just said to me, why don't you come and do this race in Spain? It's 50K uphill. And I remember having this conversations back and forth. I didn't understand the concept of being able to run more than a marathon. I thought it only went up to a marathon. I knew nothing about ultra marathon running. I just thought the marathon was like where it stopped. But anyway, I ended up doing this race, and I trained for this race like crazy. I was living in Sweden. Where I lived was completely flat. So I was just after hours in the gym, just going to the gym twice a week and running as far as I could. That's all I knew, as far as I could uphill. It's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. All I wanted to do is do that 50-kilometer uphill in less than the cutoff time, which was 8 hours, which is a bit faster than walking. That's all I knew. It was 50 kilometers, average 6%. When I got to this race, I just fell in love with Granada, and I fell in love with ultra running. And I remember being at the top of this mountain and seeing like everything that I'd seen so far in my life was all kind of, as I'd said before, like I was a product of my environment being in Manchester. And all of a sudden I saw these guys at the top of this mountain that were complete animals. They were just fit for purpose, like literally skinny, cycling like upper bodies with bodybuilder, monstrous legs. And that was it for me, that I just wanted to be like those guys and compete with those guys. And in that race, I think I came 39th, 40th or something like that. And as you can see, I did 5:17. But that lit a fire. And then I got back, I was training like crazy, then went into the Swedish winter. Got photos where I've been running like -20, -30, and really, really enjoying it. A lot of treadmill training. And then did this, and this is the main point that I want to make today, is that in March 2011, I did 3:25 for the marathon. So by this point, like 50K in 5:17 is actually okay. It's all right, like especially uphill and in the way that it was. And to be doing 5Ks like this is all right. I'm starting to get there. I'm still making loads of mistakes, but it's starting to work. And then I did this Barcelona marathon was like I hadn't done the right training. I probably wasn't ready to do that kind of thing. This Subida a Pico Valletta was probably a bit easier on the body, and I'd probably trained a lot harder for it. So my goal for this Barcelona marathon was stupidly sub-3. I went through the first half in exactly like 1:29 and just thought, this is easy. I'm just going to accelerate a little bit. And like by 22K, literally just a kilometer further, I looked behind me because I thought somebody had shot me in the hamstring. And that was the first time I'd pulled or torn my hamstring, just a micro tear in the hamstring. And it took me, as you can see, an hour and 55 minutes to do the second half, which is not the way to run a marathon. But probably one of the most painful 2 hours. I've had some painful 2 hours, but that was one of the most painful 2 hours I've ever had. But again, massive fire lit. And I remember mates kind of looking for me at this marathon because I'd lived in Barcelona, and me just. I think I had mates that stayed and just were waiting for me, and then had gone home because they thought I must have already passed because they were expecting me to run about 3 hours, and then so I had nobody at the finish line, and it was lots of self pity, but yeah, as you can see, then it kind of lit a fire, and went back the following year to the summer to do Subida al Pico Valletta again, uphill. And then I'd improved my time by, 30 minutes, 70, half an hour. And then I was starting to get serious. So I think in that race, I finished something like 18th place, and that's starting to get a decent time. And then I was doing the things like not all the results on here, but then I was starting to do a half marathon in time. sort of the time that I should be doing in order to do a marathon in sort of less than 3 hours, basically. So all of a sudden things started to click here. Then I did just a week after I'd done, and you shouldn't really do this. You shouldn't do a half marathon, and a week after do a 10K. But I was, I'm just a young, kind of naive person who just wants the hat in the ring, everything. And also, when you're living in a place like Sweden, it's not like there's the strength and depth of the races that there is in the UK every week. So you just got to get your hat in the ring wherever you can. So I did this 10K the week and after, and I'm starting to get towards 320 per kilometer here, which is about 220 marathon pace. So by that point, I'm just thinking, it's just a matter of training. I can do this speed for 10K. I just need to do this 4.2 times or whatever it is, to make the marathon a 220 marathon. That's how I'm thinking at that point. And then by this point, I've also found that if I'm now 28 years old, and I've got to be thinking, where can I compete? Still, the optimal age for a marathon run is 27. That's when the fastest people are doing the fastest marathons. It's changed a little bit different, but where can I compete? And I became obsessed with 100K. So I thought if I can run a marathon in 320 per kilometer and do it in 220, then I can run 100K in like 640, 620 potentially, and that's what I was starting to aim at. So the main point I wanted to make is this. So from the 6th of March 2011, 11 months later, on the 19th of February 2012, I did the Marathon de Sevilla, the Seville Marathon, in 50 minutes quicker. So like in 11 months. So recovering from that marathon, probably 3 weeks. I remember like struggling with stairs the day after, like the first time I'd done a marathon, the death of your quads, and then the revitalization, and then realizing, nutrition is actually pretty important. Hitting the wall is a real thing. And then like putting it together. And I remember the night, this is like a key point for me. I remember the night of the Marathon de Sevilla. I'd gone across I'd moved by that point from Sweden to Spain. So I was committed. I was all in. And I'd driven across from Granada to Seville with my mate Mick, literally the night before. We picked up our bibs. And I was sat there at 3 o'clock in the morning, or lay there at 3 o'clock in the morning doing the calculations to figure out what time do I need to run in order to be happy. And initially I was going there just to rectify what I'd done 11 months previously at the Barcelona Marathon, and just to do a sub-3 marathon for the first time. But I hadn't realized that actually I was going to bed that night, and if I ran a 3-hour marathon that night, or the next day, or a 2-hour 59 marathon, I wouldn't have been happy. So what was the point? I didn't really get why I was doing it. So I was quickly doing the calculations, and I did the calculation of how fast I need to run per kilometer in order to do a sub 240. And I ran the first half in 119 and the second half faster in 118. So it was like one of the most perfect marathons I've run in terms of pacing. But that led to a 50-minute PB, which is, I think it's pretty unheard of unless you completely mess this up, which I kind of have completely messed this up. And then this one actually gone to plan. But still, if this would have been on target and this would have been a 2:59, to then knock 22 minutes off your marathon when you're already sub 3, I think, it's definitely somebody starting out, but it's still a rare case. So, and then I start to go a bit faster that starts to happen a bit faster in the half marathon. And then I start to, and we can move on from there and see where I get to. And some of the results are missed off here because this is like for road running in the UK. And you've got Power of 10 as well, which is a lot more results on there, I think, or them both combined. So what is it? What do I think? What do I think changed? Or what do I think is the recipe for actually making it work and improving as much as you possibly can in optimally and in the shortest possible time? So I guess if if you're getting into running, if it's going to be a hobby of yours, if you're trying to become, professional in the next 5 years, whatever it is you're trying to do. And this applies for me. Running is the perfect metaphor for life. So this applies no matter what you're trying to do. I think, and it applies for me. It applies to life. The way I look at running is exactly the same way I look at life. If I can, be relentless, determined, dedicated, everything will fall in place. So I became obsessed. Simple as that. I love the quote by Bukowski: "Find what you love and let it kill you." So I became obsessed. Everything was about running and training and how I can get better. I was reading all the top trainers, the Italian trainers, the Kenyan trainers, the Irish guy in Kenya. I was reading anything I possibly could, and I also reach out to anybody, like in probably a proper cringeworthy way. I would just, if I saw that somebody was a runner on Facebook, or somebody was good, or somebody was better, everybody was better than me at this point. You have to remember, then I would simply reach out to them and say, "What's going on? How do you train? What do you do differently? What do you eat? Everything that people ask me today, I would ask them." And I think that's absolutely fine. I love it when somebody young and enthusiastic asks me questions. I absolutely love it, because I know how hungry they are for it. And you give me the option of somebody talented or somebody hungry and driven. I'm going to take the second option, hungry and driven all day long. It's all about work ethic. Yeah, so I researched what top distance runners were doing, and I tried to imitate them at my pace, and that has to be relative. And I made a few mistakes. What I should have done at this point was definitely get a coach really, really early. Somebody who believed in me, somebody who could have got into my thinking, into me moving around the world, and saw at this point how committed I was. I literally moved country. So I was living in Sweden, and I moved after the race in Granada. I moved to Granada. My philosophy was simple: if I can get better, this race is advertised to be the hardest race in the world. It's 50k uphill. There's only a couple of places in the world you can run 50k uphill. If I can get better at this race and improve, and in that first year, I definitely thought one day I'm going to win this race. And I told my friends that, and they all thought I was nuts. If I can get better at this race, then I'm going to get better at all types of running, from 5K to marathon to ultramarathon. It's all going to fit into place. It's all about that place. It's living at slight altitude at 800 meters, training high altitude above 2,400 meters. I moved country. So it was literally kind of, how do I do that? How do I kind of, how much are the rents? What's the kind of the rightmove.co.uk in Spain? How do I find a house? How do I rent a house? All that type of thing. Just figured it out how I go. And then you can be you have to have a strategy. Think, analyze, and improve. Simple as that. So you can be as obsessed as you want, as committed as you want. You can be both of those things, but it doesn't equal success. You need to have a plan and a strategy. So I could have been so much more optimal in my progress if I would have got a coach, got some wisdom behind me, instead of making mistakes, instead of overtraining. But you also have to be agile with a plan. The goal can remain. So my goal was very, very quickly became to win that race in Spain, and then to run the world record of 100k. The goal remains, but the path often changes because opportunities present themselves. You end up running for your country, then you end up doing something else, then you end up, you have obligations. Once you start getting sponsors, once you start getting noticed, and across all this, dedication. Like, anybody can be good short term. Anybody can be good for like months, weeks, even a couple of years. You got to stick at it if you really want to be great. You have to stick at it. If your goal is sub 5 hour marathon, sub 4 hour marathon, whatever it is, it's not going to happen. If that's your goal and it's a realistic goal and it's hard enough for you to actually achieve, so you have to apply yourself, it's not going to happen if you're not dedicated. It can happen if you don't think and analyze, but your improvement is going to be much quicker if you think and analyze your game. So don't just track your stuff on Garmin and Strava and stuff like that. Actually track how you feel, what you're putting in your body, how much you're sleeping. Go into detail, be 100% committed, become obsessed with your hobby or whatever you're trying to make of yourself in running. Simple as that. Hope that makes sense.